This is PRS. This is PRS. This is PRS. This is PRS. This is definitely PRS. This is PRS. This is barely PRS. I should have at least tried to review a flametop, but this is South Fuck No America, and this is as close as I could get to the real deal. Just pretend it's supposed to be a studio model, but yeah, this is as non-PRS as you can get.
It has the birdies.
That it does. It doesn't even have the logo, but the pigeons are there. 2011 PRS SE single cut in antique white. Okay, first, the elephant in the room. Is this a Les Paul? No, it isn't. That should be that, right? I should just move along and focus on this particular guitar. But given that living in South America stained means I rarely get the chance to review one of these, because all we get down here is mainstream stuff from mainstream brands or the direct-to-DVD shit you civilized country inhabiting people have never even heard of, I'll take this chance to expand on that thought just a little bit in case you haven't spent the last 20 years roaming guitar forums. Okay, basically, in January of 2000, PRS introduced for the first time the single cut model, which you could vaguely describe as a sort of Les Paulish thing. If your idea of a Les Paul is a single cut guitar with 2 humbuckers, 4 knobs, and 6 strings, a logic by which you could then classify a Telecaster Deluxe as a Les Paul with a huge cock into the hole, out of the hole, into the hole, out of the hole, well, naturally, Gibson being Gibson, so nothing wrong with this logic, because on March the 27th of the same year, they sent a perfume letter telling PRS to quit it or else. Obviously, Paul Reed Smith having been away from elementary school for many years at this point, didn't give 2 shits about it and just carried on business as usual. So upon seeing that, on November the 6th, Gibson went crying to the teacher. There was a lot of finger pointing, which including some outlandish theory about some drunk torch in a shady bar potentially seeing a guitar on stage and somehow confusing a Gibson with a PRS or the other way around, unavoidably leading to the purchase of a guitar they didn't even intend to acquire in the first place, a tragic mistake that they wouldn't even become aware of until further inspection when it was already way too late to do anything about it. Obviously, a stellar theory that only the company that tried to get away with this Jimi Hendrix signature abortion could have come up with. Luckily, none of that stopped PRS from continuing with the production of the single cut. Till the teacher did, on July the 2nd, 2004. I suppose she somehow dropped her Percocet into her afternoon Chardonnay, and the buzz lasted until the next day. I don't know. The thing is, on September the 12th, 2005, a severely hungover teacher realized her awful mistake and told Gibson to say they were sorry, which is great because I can't keep going with this stupid analogy. Look, the moral of the story is, every single brand out there makes some sort of a single cut, but unlike most Les Paul knockoffs and other miscellaneous similar models, PRS was seemingly targeting a similar segment of the dentist/lawyer market, and given that Gibson has been a little bitch for as long as most of us can remember, this kind of behavior is surprising to no one. Yes, it was a mahogany body with some fancy maple on top and clues on tuners besides the silly 4-knob tooth pickup thought process I mentioned earlier. But other than that, different shape, different scaling, different bridge type, different headstock design, different inlays, plus this has a sculpted neck joint, sculpted back, no binding, no pickguard, no poker chip, it doesn't even sound the fucking same Gibson, bitch, please. And the Gibson lawsuit horseshit. We should have never had this dog. At all. Just like we should have never had the Reverse Flying V, the Spanish Inquisition, or any Terminator movie after Terminator 2, yet here we are. Now, if every single brand out there has released some kind of a single cut at some point, why is this one literally called a single cut? Well, that's probably because when Mr. Paul Reed Smith names a thing, he behaves somewhere in between a paleontologist and a 5-year-old. He describes his creatures through their names, but more like a toddler than a scientist. It's like he randomly points at the spec sheet and yells out whatever catches his attention first, like 24 frets! Woo, only 22! That reminds me of Uncle Ted. The number on the scale is pretty, and look, mommy, look, only 1 cut. That's how the single cut got its name. So now that that's settled, the PRS SE single cut, a somewhat different guitar from the original Made America single cut, but close enough. So, like the original model, mahogany body, mahogany neck, maple top, rosewood fretboard, same overall shape, 25-inch scale, 22 frets, no binding on the neck, a cool looking exposed wood fake binding on the top, 2 ambidinkas, compensated wraparound bridge, it is able to chirp, 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 and it looks classy as fuck with its perfectly executed poly antique white finish, which, by the way, is just fucking white. There's nothing antique about it. I'll never understand the fascination guitar people have with giving fancy names to every stupid color they use in a finish, no matter how basic it is. Like, there are some classics everyone recognizes, like Fender's Seafoam Green. That deserves a name, but this is just white. It's the same white as the Olympic white on my P-Bass, the toilet white I take a shit on every day, or the bar is so white I wash my ass with afterwards. This one. Yes, I use soap like a fancy man. I'm a fancy man and I own an antique white bidet. That's how fancy I am. Anyway, more specs. Unlike the original model, there's only 2 knobs on this one, a volume and a tone, and I know this has also been the case for some of the American variants, just like there's some SE versions with 4 knobs and also different names, but it's so goddamn difficult to keep up with every single version of PRS's models. I tried to track down every single one for every single year and country of origin and SC 245s and 250s and McCarthy's, and yeah, I'll just compare this one to the OG. So, knobs, less, elsewhere. Also, unlike the original, this thing is thinner and by quite a margin. The maple cap is still roughly the same thickness though, but they simply went with a thinner back, translating not only into a very lightweight guitar, but also into a higher maple to mahogany ratio, which, if you believe in fairies like I do, it means a snappier, brighter sound. The top is obviously not carved like on the American models, but rather just beveled on the sides of the otherwise flat top, which, whatever, still looks really classy and it feels very comfortable. Then of course, like on any other SE, if you get a flame maple top, it's a veneer. There's still real maple underneath, consisting of 2 pieces joined together at the center, even on solid finish ones, since they're not filthy animals like Gibson, but if you see fancy wood, it's just a thin layer on top. The switch. I hate the placement of the toggle switch. It's out of the way, I've never hit it accidentally, and I fuck with it way less than on any of my other guitars, which means more playing and less fumbling with the toggle thingy, which translates into more inspired playing, which is wrong. Guitar is all about getting tones using switches, but this one makes me use my fingers like a real musician, so it's wrong. The 4 knob versions have been a more familiar place, but this one's wrong because reasons, and the strap buttons seem normal, fair side, but they make the strap very hard to remove. Like, seriously, look at the way these are profiled. Look at how hard it is to try to remove the strap, even if you really try. How am I supposed to age it if I don't drop it every once in a while? That wouldn't be a problem with the Gibson. And why does my mind keep going back to Gibson and drawing unnecessary comparisons? Why does it keep trying to inconspicuously figure out which one is the superior design? It's already been established. This guitar has nothing to do with the Gibson Les Paul, so the entire superiority argument makes no sense whatsoever. It'd be like saying a Whopper is superior when compared to a 91 Honda Accord, or the other way around. Stupid, but still, is it? Superior, I mean. Well, as a lifetime Gibson fan that's never even entertained the thought of owning a PRS, got this on a trade with the sole intention of selling it right away, and will probably die of a stroke in his 40s while trying to survive a full gig playing a no-weight relieved Les Paul, the dumbest smile possible in his face? Absolutely. Of course, at first, it took me a while to accept it, but only because I was fighting back honesty with all my fanboy might. Deep inside though, I knew the answer right away. I might still love a Les Paul way more than I'll ever get to like this thing, but I gotta admit, it's without a question a much more polished design. Slightest fart, strap balance is perfect. Ergonomically, it simply wipes a summer afternoon's cranky ass with anything Gibson or Fender could ever throw its way. The neck is round, it fills the hand nicely, almost like a 50s Gibson style, but it doesn't feel thick. It feels fast, unimpeding, almost too easy to play. Upper fret access is great, not the best ever, but way above average. Tuning stability is unbelievable thanks to sturdy construction, solid bridge, and PRS's excellent headstock geometry. Then there's the details, the things you feel and the ones you don't. Fit and finish are stupid all around. Not perfect. Fretwork, flawless. Cosmetics, not a hair over the line anywhere. This is Korea, by the way. Have I mentioned that yet? And every piece of hardware is good quality. Even the pots. They might not be fancy ones, but they're full size, and after 12 years of use, they still work perfectly and feel like good pots, no scratchy noises or anything. Hell, they even threw in a 180 picofarad cap on the volume, which granted, it's a half-assed attempt to treble bleed and underperforms with great success, but is a gesture that counts here, because I guess the point that gets to be made here is, even on its bottom tier, PRS will always try. It's always trying to improve on itself, to perfect the formula, to get the most out of it, and this guitar in particular is certainly punching way above its weight. And yes, what usually ends up happening when you try too hard is it shows, which is exactly what's wrong, not just with this guitar, but with Paul Reed Smith himself. Look, the world of guitar was just fine up until the early 80s. Timeless classics were cheap, rarely available, and in their best form, I might add. On top of that, there were billions of clones coming from every square inch of the Far East in every shape imaginable, including some that didn't even resemble the stuff they were trying to copy. Everything was great. Then, out of nowhere, comes this 4-8 sissy banging into fancy figure logs, listen to the fuck knows what, see shits and everything we knew. The nerve of this douche. Not even a real established guitar entrepreneur like all those legends before him. Yeah, this dirty hippie actually plays guitar. And so what does he do? This fucking queermo thinks he can reinvent the wheel because he's better than everyone, right? Oh, he's gonna fix everything he is. Everybody knows that when you start polishing the old tried and true concepts, somewhere along the way you end up losing whatever made them great to begin with. Like overly producing a great song. The same applies to guitar, which is why the Telecaster is the greatest guitar ever, because all you really need is a barn door, some screws and wire. That's it. You don't mess with perfection. And you should play through an amp with 2 rectifiers and only 7 other components. That's how the real talent comes out. Through square edges and pre-war technology. Or at least is what the myth told me. And boy did I swallow it whole. Line, sinker, bucket, the fisherman's asshole. I, like all those old curmudgeons out there, you know which ones, was expecting an uninspired, soulless sound, more of the same, an overachieving clone with nothing really new to offer, which is a beautifully ironic stance coming from the mindset of a crowd that can own 17 overpriced Les Pauls and still rave about their different tones and personalities and how they could tell them apart blindfolded while sticking pills into their butthole. It's all horseshit. And this guitar is great, and I've been wrong for the longest time. This guitar does not suffer from the lack of character an overly polished guitar design is supposed to lead to. At all. You wanna know what it sounds like? Okay, here's what my first impression was and still kinda is. It sits somewhere in between my Les Paul Traditional, my Yamaha Repstor 502, and my Jackson Dinky Minion. I am not kidding. It's got the bite and speed of the Repstar with the old school honk and Les Paulness of the Tread and the clarity, kick, and strange sense of fun of the Minion. The bridge pickup reminds me of the bluesy warmth of the 57 Classic on the Les Paul. It's very close but less busy on the low end, although just as chimey and with a bit of extra punch to it. Then the neck is that modern, clear thing of that Jackson type sound. In both positions treat a ball again with the same authority and disdain of a metal type guitar. It's like a hot machete cutting through a brick of poppies. Then the metal, I get some Gibson 490, 498 vibes. Reminds me of the metal position of my 2013 LPJ, but you can think of a studio or a custom if you will, similar stuff. But then it's so reshaped by the snappy response of the one-piece wraparound bridge and the thin body, which, as I mentioned before, if you believe in magic and shit, has a greater maple to mahogany ratio than your usual Les Paul types or the American singles, let alone the McCarthy models. Then the scale is this what the fuck 25-incher, and you notice it. I did like 50 back and forths with 24 3/4 and 25.5-inch scale guitars, and you do notice it more than I was expecting. I wanted to scream placebo at the walls like a nutcase, but there really is something to it. Then the sustain. Oh, have mercy, the sustain. It's just ridiculous. It's as if somehow a Les Paul, a Tele, a Jackson, and an SG had gangbanged a Junior, and then all the good got mixed, and so yeah, I wanted to hate it. I wanted to clean it, set it up, and sell it. But the moment I plugged it in, I instantly liked it and got pissed about it. Then immediately came the knee-jerk reaction of comparing it to every guitar I own. In desperate seek for redundancy, trying to convince myself this thing had nothing to offer and just had to go just as I had planned. And then I posted something else for sale. One I'd been putting off for a while, which was way more redundant. This guitar wasn't at all. For so long, I hated the idea of a PRS, simply fueled by forum nonsense and overly compressed YouTube videos. Then, out of the fucking blue, comes this Dove soap bar looking thing from the far corners of some unknown land surrounded by communists, sitting right at the bottom of the PRS price charts, and what do you know? Blows out of the water half the guitars I've had the chance of playing. Fuck you, Paul Reed Smith. Fucking hate you and everything you represent, you magnificent genius. Damn you and the beautiful creations you come up with, you fucking asshole. And you're a nerd. And the birds are gay.